No, of course. Do we have written testimony or no?
No,
Okay.
I post for myself.
Okay, welcome back everyone to Senate Education. It is Tuesday, April 9th, 3:32, and we have Attorney General Charity Clark with us to talk about H 873. Comment on H 873. So welcome, Attorney General Clark, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you about the state's PPD litigation against Monsanto and the proposal you're considering about the school testing program. I thought it'd be helpful to give you a little overview of the case and a status update, and then I'll share some thoughts about the proposal that came from the House. So some of this is familiar, but just I'm sure it's a point of curiosity obviously connects with this. Last June, we filed a lawsuit against Monsanto on behalf of the state of Vermont in Chittenden Superior Court, State Court. The basic facts are that Monsanto created, marketed, developed, sold, and distributed at least 99%, so almost all the PCBs that would come into Vermont. And as we know, PCBs are toxic and synthetic chemical. Some of the human health effects associated with PCBs include liver, thyroid, dermal, and ocular changes, immunological alterations, neurodevelopmental and neurobehavioral changes, reduced birth weight, reproductive toxicity, and cancer. PCBs were used in paints, caulks, inks, dyes, paper products, the list goes on. I'm sure you guys are probably getting a lot of this, so I don't want to belabor this. These are just things that were included in our factual allegations in our complaint. And humans are exposed to PCBs primarily from eating contaminated food, drinking, or swimming in contaminated water, and breathing contaminated air. So they were banned in the 1970s, but they remain in the state's natural resources and other places such as schools. So those are the basic facts. Our allegation is that Monsanto was aware of these effects of PCBs and hid these negative effects from the public, and then continued to produce and market and sell them, including for use in building materials. So that's the basic nut of the case. What we're seeking is restoration and loss of damages for our natural resources and the cost to investigate and remediate the PCB contamination in schools and the natural resources. And so this would include reimbursement for the money the state has spent on the school testing and remediation program. And I should note that all schools, approved independent schools, public schools, recognized independent schools, these are the schools that are in the testing program, those same schools that are impacted by our litigation. And they don't have to do anything to be a part of it, the schools are just a part of it. I don't want to bore you, but we can do that through what's called the parents patriae theory, which is the Latin, obviously, but the Attorney General can bring lawsuits to protect the health and well-being of residents when a substantial segment of the population is threatened. So that's why we can do that, parents patriae theory. I should also note I'm sure we'll pursue attorney's fees that we're spending, including in the state's costs. There are no guarantees about how any litigation is going to turn out at the end. But that is the nature of the case. That's what we're seeking. And we're working really hard with our goal in mind to try to get as much money as we can to hold Monsanto accountable, and for the reasons that we want remediation to be done so that our natural resources and our schools can be healthy again. The status of the case is, which this is not surprising, there's a motion to dismiss filed by Monsanto. So when there's motions practice, we go back and forth with papers, and then we have oral argument. The oral argument is scheduled for later this month. After oral argument, the judge will make a decision. And if we prevail and the case continues, then we will begin the discovery portion of the case where we, exchange documents and depositions and all of that. It's been almost a year, and we are really at just the beginning of this motions practice stage. So these cases do take a very long time. In some cases, this big case, a lot of money is at stake. So both sides are, I think, it's fair to say, are fighting really hard on their cases, and we certainly are. So wanted to address the timing and the funding question of the proposal that came over from the House, which is sort of the fundamental part of that bill, and recognizing that Monsanto created this problem, but lawsuits take time, and we are trying to deal with the problem in a way that recognizes the expense and also the timing of the eventual hopeful outcome that we have with regards to holding Monsanto accountable. So I wanted to note, I appreciated the safeguard. The proposal has a potential delay kicking in when the funds get low for the program. And it's only for initial testing, any delay. I appreciate that. And that there's mechanisms to ensure the legislature can act quickly. And I just so appreciate everyone taking this so seriously. I want to encourage the legislature to do everything you can to ensure that the testing program continues. And we want to obviously protect the health of students and staff in schools across Vermont. But the testing program is good policy for schools. It allows them to plan ahead and get timely information now. I also think moving ahead minimizes and potentially removes any inequality among school districts. And I wanted to just flag a couple of things. One that just caught my eye, I think you might think about changing. You can work with Ledge Council more specifically, if that's helpful. The first is section F. It says, notwithstanding subsection B of the section and the intent for this program, the state of Vermont shall not pay for the costs of investigation, remediation, removal of PCBs in schools when this was not in response to indoor testing required pursuant to the Act, but instead was a part of a planned renovation or construction project. I kind of want us to spend maybe a little bit of time and just talk with Ledge Council. What I want to make sure, I see what's trying to be done here, and it makes perfect sense. I just want to make sure that in the ultimate settlement that we might arrive at, we make sure that everybody who has been tested can use that money. It might be fine the way it is, but I wanted to flag it. We'll talk with Ledge Council and just think about, is this the best language, or maybe tweaking it a little bit?
And you'll reach out directly to Michael Brady?
If that's okay.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
yes, we will do that.
Sure.
Just to make sure we're all on the same page about that one, and it could be fine, but it caught our attention, so I wanted to just flag it.
So, did you have a question?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about tweaking the language to what end?
So what I think is what's my hunch when I read this is it's trying to say that if someone already had a renovation plan and PCBs are discovered, like that's not necessarily part of the program. We want to make sure that there's equity among school districts. That's always important for a number of reasons from our perspective. And we also want to make sure that when the settlement happens, that there's not an argument to be made that somehow those funds can't be applied. So we just want to make sure that we're using language that doesn't create equity problems among the districts, or, trying to envision basically what a factual scenario would realistically look like, and make sure that we're anticipating that in this language so that we can be sure that every school district gets the remediation that they need and the reimbursement of testing that they need. So caught our eye, but we can talk to Michael Brady and see what he has to say and circle back with you all if we have a suggestion for an edit. The other change that I would consider is one of the very last sentences of the bill says that all schools it's a deletion of all schools subject to this subsection shall test for PCBs on or before July 1st, 2027. I understand the desire to remove the time frame, because if there is a delay in the testing, you don't want to have that. But I wonder if you should include this requirement that all schools be tested and leave that in. So maybe you attach the deadline to the new mechanism of, the $4 million and that kind of new regime of a timeframe, but I think maybe keeping language that requires schools to be tested might be a good thing, so. And really, those are the only kind of substantive comments I wanted to say, just emphasizing how it would be really wonderful to ensure the funding goes forward for this. And I know that that always presents challenges, but I think it would be best for the whole plan going forward.
Senator Buell.
And then Senator Weed. So we heard today in Health and Welfare that we have a $17.9 million shortfall in revenue compared to 2024, and a 129 million shortfall from 23. So we're looking at some shortfalls. So I'm just wondering, now that we know that we've tested the schools that are most at risk, we've done that. But we still, I believe, have the only testing program in the country, if not the world. We know that the Department of Health raised the testing, the contamination levels after they discovered VHS. So we know that those numbers aren't some kind of magical number based in static science, because they were able to change them really pretty quickly on a dime. And we know that school budgets are going down, a third of them are going down across the state. We know that, for example, Twin Valley just got tested and they're going to be required to do their remediation and their cleanup for the next 2 years. I'm just wondering where all this money is going to come from. And I do hope that you are and we are successful in this litigation. I really, really do. But in the meantime, in the 5, 10, 15, 20 years that it takes to get to a resolution, what are we doing?
I don't
Put
think.
your joint fiscal head up.
Yeah.
I'm trying to
Instead of, legal.
help me understand.
I don't think it's gonna take 20 years or 10 years. I actually don't think it's gonna take 5 years, but I suppose it could. But we're the lawyers, so when we do our work, we're in this capacity, we wear a lot of different hats, but in this work, what we're doing is working as hard as we can to win our lawsuit and hold Monsanto accountable for the harm that they caused with their toxic chemicals. And I totally understand that there is the affordability challenges that we have and the budget challenges that we have. But the fact is that a lot of the schools that have been tested do have PCB contamination. And there are a lot of schools that still need to be tested. And I think that the timeframe was if your school was built or renovated before 1980. So it's a large number of schools. And I leave kind of the expertise on that to the experts who are Secretary Moore and Commissioner Levine. But unfortunately, just because we don't have as much money to test as we wish we did, doesn't mean there aren't toxic PCBs in school.
Right, and nicotine is also toxic, and the governor just vetoed a bill that would protect kids from nicotine. So I'm a little confused about where the priorities are in this administration. I don't know, I'm a little bit baffled. That said, I guess because you're here as your capacity as Attorney General, which I totally appreciate, would pausing the testing definitively cause us to lose this lawsuit?
I wouldn't want to sit here on the record and let Monsanto know what our litigation strategy is, so I'm gonna say I'm not gonna answer that. I think that it would have an impact on our case, but I'm not at liberty to really go into a lot of the details, unfortunately.
Can you say why it would have an impact? Or do you not want to comment?
I really don't want to comment on it.
So I've sort of been part of something similar to this with PFAS over the years, and there was a different attorney general and two administrations, and the lawsuit against Seneca Band, which did in the end produce something like only $65 million for connecting people in Bennington. That being said, I'm also just historically, just a curiosity question, did the state sue the cigarette manufacturers at one point also? Because I know we have tobacco money, but I don't know if that's federal or if that's state.
It's the state,
It
the
is,
attorney
okay.
general sued, and by now, I think we've approached $1 billion that
Okay.
the state of Vermont has obtained through that settlement.
Okay.
It's roughly like $25 million a year, but we had 10 years, we got $35 million for being a leader in the lawsuit.
Senator.
A couple questions. First, can you comment on whether the governor supports this particular?
I don't represent him in the legislature, I represent him in other capacities, but I can't, sorry.
Julie
I mean,
Moore,
Julie-
Julie Moore does represent him.
Yeah.
I'm curious if the lawsuit, I may have just missed it when you gave good introduction summary and such, but does it include like state buildings and
No.
municipal buildings and?
No.
Why?
We have a statewide testing program for schools, so we included schools, so the decision was made to focus on the schools and the natural resources that were also harmed by PCBs.
Okay, but I'll just play devil's advocate.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking out for the, like tobacco, you're really, if you're looking out for the good of the citizens. I'm just curious why, like, just something as direct as state buildings, why that wouldn't be, essentially rolled into the lawsuit as covering for potential hazards discovered, in the future.
Mm-hmm. I can, we just decided not to, it's something that we looked at, and I can, get you some more definitive answers and circle back with you.
Okay, I was just curious,
Yeah.
because, that's the next level, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's gonna be, oh my God, state's gotta remediate, certain buildings, then the municipalities, then businesses and citizens' homes and stuff. It's gonna be, and, tobacco wasn't something which was, student smokers only, it was the whole state. I just wondered if that kind of played into your thought process.
So the tobacco case was also a consumer case, was brought under a different statute, so it's a little bit different too, in that way too.
Okay.
And it was nationwide effort, although we sued here in Vermont, it was nationwide effort, and the settlement was nationwide. So, and with the territories as well.
And with this particular lawsuit, Monsanto lawsuit, are there other states that are, you may have said it, apologies, are there others that are going down the same track?
Yeah, other states have sued Monsanto for PCB contamination of natural resources, but we're the only state that sued on behalf of schools, because we're the only state that has a statewide testing department.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
Senator Sheen, anything?
No, I have nothing, just here to listen, but yeah, thank you for testifying, and yeah, no, I don't have any questions.
Thank you, Attorney General Clark, for coming in. Really appreciate it. And it will look, you'll connect with Michael Grady. I know Secretary Moore was in from the administration. She's also bringing forward some edits to H873, which we'll look at when she has them and continue our work on it.
Great, well, thank you for having me, for all of your work, and if you have any follow-up questions that come up, just let us know, we're happy to come back or in writing, whatever works.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Committee, pushing 4 o'clock. I'm gonna head to chairs